I look back as a parent and I look back at things that I changed and grew at. My oldest, I can tell you that because I grew up wanting affirmation and
Mm,
feeling like maybe I wasn't getting what I needed, I told my son, my oldest, how much I loved him, how much I was proud of him, how much and he needs a little bit of that, but he probably, as I grew up and I learned, my youngest son in kindergarten, we held him back. He had we had to go to eye therapy. My wife knows the technical term. I don't. I don't know what it was, but he was seeing words blur together, and we
mm,
held him back. He got eye therapy from Dr. Westcott locally, who was amazing. And at the end, I'll never forget Dr. Westcott. I was telling Braden, my youngest, that we were so proud of him, and Dr. Westcott said, "You know what, Braden? You who did this?" And I listened. I was like, "This is so powerful." And Braden goes, "I did this." And he had a cake and he had his little glasses on and he I mean, he was so upset that he wasn't moving forward in class and he
mm.
was so driven and disciplined, but he went every day and did this. He created this discipline.
Wow.
And Dr. Westcott says, "Who did this?" And he goes, "I did this." And he goes, "It's really important that you are proud of yourself."
Yes,
That
yes,
is building the confidence, right? And so I
yes.
started to think and change even the way I spoke to both my boys, whether they know it, whether they understand it. My youngest son is now playing in a soccer academy, and I go back to the discipline that he had at 5 years old and what was taught to
Mm,
him, and some of the things that he implements today that I do at 45 that he's
right.
doing at 14 that
Yes.
I
Yeah,
wish that kids saw and were able to see earlier because it's like a cheat code. But just
it
the "I'm
is.
proud of you" versus "you should be proud of yourself" and the
Yes.
confidence shift that had in my sons, so
Mm.
amazing.
Well, and it's interesting because everything we're really talking about is under the umbrella on what's called emotional intelligence. Okay, that's kind of like the clinical big word. And if people get the scorecard on our website, you will see it. It really is. It is the cheat sheet for what exactly is emotional intelligence. It's these five core skills. It spells the acronym cards. And the way I describe it is it's like a language. So if I want to learn how to speak French, I want to go to France and I want to surround myself with other people who speak French. The best way to learn the middle chair, the best way to learn these five core skills of emotional intelligence is you surround yourself with other people that are actually also in the same place because you'll learn it. And the powerful thing with children, and this is one of the reasons I love teaching it to kids, is it's like a language. If they can learn it really young, they actually pick it up faster, way faster than adults. Like, I can take somebody who is in that left chair. I know what to do to help them move in that middle chair. I know what to do, and I can do it faster when I've got a child than I've actually got an adult because the toxic mindset hasn't been going on long enough. So I can, we can course correct it actually really fast. And so with what you're talking about with your son, the fact that, he had the goal, that he put his head down, he had the meaningful goal, he steps on the gas, and they actually say a lot of times self-discipline is one of the secret sauces. It's the fourth of the five metrics. So you think about with what your son did, right? So he had the goal, so he had the attitude, he had also the discipline, right? The decision making and self-discipline to kind of keep doing it. That's now also going to impact in terms of his overall confidence and his overall stress. So, how did he feel when he went into the next grade? When he went into the first grade and he could actually see properly, he probably felt less stressed, less anxious. He could actually see things and understand things. So, him just taking that one step, he's now actually building three of the five metrics. So it's cool. We think, well,
It
it's
is
about
cool.
eyes, but it's not about eyes. This
No.
is about it. The eyes is just the example on how he was learning and building these five metrics. So that's the piece that I feel is really important is that, when I'm working with leaders or entrepreneurs or, professionals, parents, and they'll say, this is the topic. I'm like, hey, this is just the topic. Let's use that topic, but let's figure out how we can actually develop these kind of core skills as we're talking about that topic. So we're kind of doing two things at once because the topic that I think is not probably an issue for him anymore. But what's continued is that he's actually developed these EQ skills, which is really exciting.
Yeah, both of my sons and like you said, you have teenagers, so you understand. they're great at different things and they pick each other up for different things. I've heard you talk about birth order and how the youngest looks up to the oldest. The hardest thing for me as a dad is when they're together and I'm the butt of their jokes. Like I'm confident, I'm
Right.
sitting in the night
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
middle chair and I
yeah,
know that I'm good and I'm fine and I love them and then they start just going at me and I'm like, "Man, this is one of the hardest things from a parenting perspective because I know that it's just how they're gathering their own confidence and they're messing with us, but we're playing
yeah,
there a lot of times it's like, "Oh, hey dad, let's play that song that you think is so great," or "Hey dad, you wanna
yeah,
watch a show?" And like the youngest picks on me and the oldest thinks it's hilarious
yeah,
and I deep down I love that they're building that relationship, but at the same time I'm like, "Okay, you don't gain your worth from whether or not
yeah,
they think that this is
yes,
that you're cool enough," or so
yes,
but it is an
yes.
interesting dynamic.
It is an interesting dynamic, and it's a again, sitting in that middle chair as a parent, people can and this is a really common theme that I see when we work with a lot of business leaders, like, a lot of the businesses that we work with, they're like, "Okay, can we talk, like, for 30 minutes about my team and about scaling and building and developing my managers, and then can I just spend the last 30 minutes I wanna talk about my wife and my kids. Can we just let" I'm like, "Sure," and so that's literally how we do our sessions, right? And what's interesting is a lot of the business leaders that I work with, a lot of them feel fairly confident in their business skills. We're working with, some very fast growing organizations. So they feel like very competent, middle chair. I know what I'm doing. But when we get into the personal side, a lot of them like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was just in Whistler not too long ago, and I was leading with 40 CEOs and their daughters. It was a 4-day retreat, and I was kind of walking them through these different exercises. And this is a very common theme with a lot of leaders is that they feel really good in one part, but actually not the other part. And I think part of the biggest thing with is sitting in that middle chair is I am enough, period. So yes, I want to have a great relationship with my kids and build a business and friendships and all of that, but my self-worth is not based on the outcome. And and so when we have that mindset, it just tends to give more serenity and some peace. So if the outcome turns out differently, it's like my self-esteem doesn't plummet with it. It feels like there's a stability to it versus kind of this up and down yo-yo effect. So it's a really important piece for parents because a lot of parents will think I'm okay if my kids like me. I'm okay if and all of a sudden then they put that mindset actually puts them into a bit of an anxious posture, and kids sense that, and then it can become a bit of a self-sabotage situation.
Sure. How do you feel as a mother, you can take your research and apply it? You have teenagers, you've
Yes.
lived in this space, you're an expert, by all accords in every level, like, my data sheet here is huge, um, but when you apply it in real life and you see it, what is a
Yes.
technique
It's a
that
great
you're doing?
question. So it's interesting, when I started this work, I was not married and I had no children. And in Canada, I became known as a teen expert. I was in my 20s, I started writing books, I was doing television shows, I was producing shows, I was traveling across the country, I had, like, great sponsors that were sponsoring my work, and I was doing this all before I was married and I had kids. And I remember, in many conferences I was speaking at, whether it's school conferences or educational conferences, people would say, "You just wait till you have your own. You just wait." And it would irritate me. It's like, "What do you think?" Like, I specialize in this, I have a practice, I know what I'm doing, and I thought to myself, "I know what I'm gonna do when I have my own kids. I'm gonna read my own books, and I'm gonna listen to my own CDs." And because it's one thing for us to teach, it's another thing for us to apply, right? So I thought, "I'm going to just be more intentional to make sure that I am applying what I'm telling everybody else to do." And, my kids my husband and I were just talking about this last night. We have such great kids. I am so proud of my kids. They're actually home today. They have a snow day, so
Oh.
they're downstairs. Yeah, we live north of Toronto. We've got, like, lots of snow right now. So I've got 2 amazing kids. Am I a perfect mother? Absolutely not, and I will be the first to admit it, and they would tell you that actually as well. But they would also say that I'm a great mom, but I think part of it is that my husband and I really try very hard to apply and practice what we preach. So, who you're seeing and hearing right now is who I try to be when I'm with my husband, with my so I'm a pastor's daughter, and so I know what that feels like to have a parent where you see the parent on stage. And so my father did an amazing job at saying, I've got a different role when I'm a pastor, I'm up on and I'm preaching. But I'm gonna be imperfect. I am imperfect, but I'm gonna try to own my stuff as fast as possible, and I'm gonna apologize as fast as possible, and I'm open to feedback. And so I feel like I had a really good model on how you can have a parent who has a public job and, who they see, and are they really the same person when they're actually at home? And in my case, my father was yes. Like, he did a really good job at kind of separating those boundaries, and so I feel like I had a really good example of that because I know a lot of pastors' kids, their situation's disastrous because there's tons of hypocrisy, and it's all this acting game. I didn't have that experience. Mine was very positive, and so I've tried really, really hard to do the same thing with my kids. The joke that they would often say to me, this is definitely the area that I always have to be the most careful of, is that I have so much content in my brain and I just want to teach them so
Yeah,
much, right? So the biggest obstacle, and they joke with me, like, Mom, we don't need another TED talk. Okay, so I'll pick them up in the car and like also they're like, we don't need another TED talk. Or they'll get home, or like, yeah, Mom just went on. She just gave me her 50th TED talk. Cause I
yeah,
get in these like little I start spinning about like, okay, have you thought about this? Or and I have to be really mindful to be a mom and not a coach, and a mom and not a speaker with them. But they're good, and I've given them permission to flag me on it. Like, when I kinda cross that line, we make it into a joke, but it is really fun to apply this. Really fun to apply it, and I think they would say that they benefit a lot from the learning of it, but it is a little bit of a joke on how many TED Talks. This is why
yeah.
you have to keep working, Scott. Like, if it wasn't if I didn't have like, I need an outlet. I've got all this, like, content in my brain. I want this is my purpose is to impact worldwide. I want people to learn these things and learn these tools so they can really achieve their success in life, and so I'm so thankful I have an outlet because otherwise my poor kids would be, like, hearing me out way more than they actually do.
Yeah, you don't high performers, we use that term a lot, but you don't become great at something without having hyper focus. And when you're hyper focused on something that you really feel you have a great handle on, it
Yes.
is innate in you to wanna teach it. And the
Yes.
hardest thing is when you love somebody as much as we do our children, there's
Yes.
nobody that we wanna feed information more to than them, and there's nobody less willing to listen
I know.
all the way through. But then
Yeah.
I get these moments as a father where I'll see my wife and I will be with friends or we'll hear a story at school and the boys will be saying something and I'm like, "Ooh, that's our mindset. Ooh,
Yes.
that's what we believe. Oh, they're standing up for someone that's having a hard time or they're doing things that we believe that are making them great humans. And that's really my goal is to help them become a great human and they can choose the path and the
Yeah.
success. And if they're not
Yeah.
hyper focused like us, that's
Yeah.
okay too. If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.